So hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of The Wedding Circle. So we have a very exciting guest with us today, and he's here to talk to us about his incredibly successful wedding videography business and hopefully shed some light on how videography can fit into your wedding day and why every couple should consider having their special day filmed. So hello and welcome to Steph from Lincolnshire Videography.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. Is it Steph or Stefan?
Steph is fine, yeah. I'm
Okay.
only called Stefan by my mum if I'm in trouble.
Oh yeah, that's the one.
So, if you could tell us just a little bit about yourself, about your business, how long have you been doing it, and things like that, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem. So, my name is obviously Steph, and I am the owner and founder of Lincolnshire Videography. I am the right side of 30 years old, but it is on the horizon. I can see it coming. I think it's approaching faster than I'd like, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it won't be as scary as what I think it is.
Yeah,
30
I've surpassed that special age, and it's quite nice over this side of 30.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad to know that, and I'll be joining you soon.
See you there.
Yeah, see you there, be there. But yeah, so yeah, I started the business back in 2014, and before that, it was just a sort of a hobby and a passion of mine, really, photography more than videography, actually. And
Mm,
it was only really by getting married myself that we experienced obviously planning a wedding and booking a videographer. And so it was an interesting sort of time um, looking for the right videographer, deciding whether we wanted a videographer at all, and just going through that sort of creative process that all couples go through. And also,
mm,
it largely came down to sort of price as well. When we were looking for a videographer, so it's interesting really because the sort of the coin has flipped in that sense. But
yeah.
so going back to 2013 when we sort of planning to get married,
Hmm.
we, like everybody, booked our venue, booked a photographer, and my wife now said, "I'd really like a videographer," and it wasn't really something that I'd considered, and basically she forced me into it.
Oh, how
She
could
said, "We
she?
we are having one," and I was like, "They're too expensive. I don't want one." um, And yeah, so it sort of we booked a videographer, and it was the single most best thing that we booked for our wedding day. And I say that now. Obviously, I'm a videographer, so when I say that, it always sounds like, yeah, you would say that though, wouldn't you?
Mm,
But it genuinely was. I mean, we went on honeymoon to Mexico, and we opened our wedding highlight film. The sun was setting, and it was just absolutely wonderful to be able to relive those moments we missed. And weddings,
yeah.
as everybody will know, are so fast paced. Um,
Oh, yeah.
Everybody says it, don't they? They say how quick it goes, but it really does. So to be able to watch that back, it just sparked something in me to just. I wanted a part of that. I was already into photography anyway, and I was like, wow, that how I just felt opening that short highlight film there. I want to make people feel like that. And I know that sounds really cheesy as well, but that's the genuine story of how Lincolnshire Videography was born.
No, I
Mm,
think that's really nice, and as well, it's real, isn't it? Like what the feeling you had, and what kind of you want your customers to have. You've lived that, so it's not like you're completely on that page, aren't you? So no, I think that's really good. Were you trying to suss him out all day, Steph? Like trying to figure out what he were doing?
No, not at all. Like I say, when we got married, I wasn't really videography wasn't on the horizon for me. I was a keen amateur photographer. I had a camera, and I used to like taking pictures of the family and things like that, and having a little play around in Lightroom, and nothing major, just really amateur. So when we got married, I wasn't looking at what he was doing. I wasn't watching how he was filming or anything
Yeah.
like that. It was just purely that. on receiving it, and to some extent, we sort of forgot that we'd had a videographer. Actually, it was one of those things, and this is all from a male's perspective. Obviously, I'm not saying that my wife forgot we had a videographer because I'm sure she didn't, but I certainly forgot that we did have a videographer, and it weren't until we had that sort of link sent through to us whilst we were on our honeymoon. And it was just magic. It was just really magic to sit and watch what we'd already forgotten in such a short space of time. Only 2 weeks later,
Mm.
we'd sort of our memories had faded with all the excitement and the travel into our honeymoon and things like that. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's so lovely. And going back, sort of now you're in it and you are a videographer, and if you look at your wedding video now, do you want to make any changes, or do you still just love it for what it is? Would you've wanted it to be have done any differently?
No, not at all. I suppose because it was our day, and I try not to look at it from a technical aspect or anything
Mm.
like that, because I think if you started looking at it from don't get me wrong. I mean, I have looked at it and thought, oh, I'd probably change the colours or something like that, but nothing major. He did a really great job, and actually, I'm really good friends and colleagues with him now. So when I don't have space in my calendar, there's a few videographers that I recommend, and he's one of them.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, in terms of style then, so what is now you're, established videographer and you've been doing it for a few years. What would you say your style of videography is? Because I know there's different, sort of ways to go about a video, a cinematic, or if it's journalistic, or maybe you're going to tell the story of the wedding day. So what do you kind of sort of stick to?
My sort of general rule is to capture the day as naturally as physically possible, without being intrusive. I sort of think, again, having experience of getting married, you spend such a long time planning your wedding. Um, the last thing that you want is for anybody to come and be intrusive or in the way, or there's quite a lot of misconceptions with videography, and I think they come from sort of the olden days, dare I say it, where you might have had a guy with a big camera on his shoulder stood at the back of the church, and he would literally follow you around all day. So
Paparazzi.
yeah, exactly. And so I think there's still a bit of a misconception when it comes to video. We still get that a lot, like, will you be sort of following us around? Will we know? So I'm the sort of opposite to that. So I try and capture everything as natural as physically possible. And that really is my style, naturally captured, unintrusive. There is an artistic flair in the work that I bring to it, but mainly it's just capturing everything as
Mm.
naturally as possible, capturing them moments the first time without getting people to reenact it, or you know um, to redo a moment that you've missed or anything like that. It's just trying to be in the right place at the right time with the right settings, and capture that moment. And I suppose that just comes from experience, really.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with you at, weddings, and I can definitely say that you're definitely not intrusive, and you kind of just disappear into the background, and it's almost like you're one of the guests, but you obviously then have your equipment. But then when you see what you've created, I mean, I've seen a lot of your work over on your social media pages and things, and it's just unbelievable that you've created such an atmospheric, artistic, beautiful piece of work, and we barely even knew you were there. It's, like, outstanding the way you can do that. That's so impressive.
I'm blushing. I'm blushing. No, thank you. That's really kind of you. But no, I suppose really I just try and look for the story of the couple. What is their story? And you get a lot of that narrative from the speeches and any readings and things like that, and by getting to know the couples, before the wedding day. So really it's just about, for me, capturing their wedding day in the way that they wanted it to be seen, the way that they envisaged it before, when they started planning, and how they wanted it to be seen, and the story and how they wanted it
Mm.
to be told. And yeah, I guess it's capturing those moments naturally, capturing their story nice and naturally, and then going through it all in the post-production process, and matching it all up to their personalities and the vibe of the day. So there is a creative process there that I go through, which brings us to that point of creating something memorable for them. But yeah, the main things and the core sort of values, if you like, are capturing everything nice and naturally, and being as unobtrusive as physically possible. You know, if I'm recording and somebody clocks me, I'll move straight away. I'll move and I'll relocate and I'll capture them from a different angle, or you know, as far away as possible. So that's just how I like to capture weddings, and there's no right or wrong way of capturing a wedding. I don't think it's just everybody has
Mm.
a different taste. You know, I know some couples that really like videographers to be, quite more involved than what possibly I am, and you know, wanting to create something that's really energetic or more staged. And again, there will be couples out there that are looking for that, and again, there's no right or wrong way. I don't think.
Yeah, personal taste.
Yeah, of
Sure.
course. How Stefan, if someone wanted to watch like some of your work, how's the best way for them to do that? Is it like through your social media, or do you have some videos on your website?
Yeah, I try to keep my website as up to date as possible. I'm a lot more active on Instagram than I am Facebook, I would say. So I would say
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the two main locations would be Instagram and website, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes for probably most businesses now. It's just the way of the world, really. I think all inspiration generally it comes. You kind of get like your Pinterest inspiration, don't you? Which is like the ultimate. But then the real life inspo, I do think still comes from Instagram, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah. I just think that, well, we'll not get into the what's better about Instagram than Facebook, but I just prefer
Save
it.
that for
I don't
another
know why.
podcast.
It's very it's very all about the images, though, isn't it? And that's obviously the way you operate and the way that you respond. Well, it's rather than being wordy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So, if a couple is looking, to hire a videographer, there's a couple of questions that I want to ask. So, the first thing would be, um, what sort of questions do you think a couple should be asking their videographer? And also, is there anything that they would need to prep? Once they've got their videographer, is there anything that they need to prep before the big day to sort of create something really magical? Because I was just talking to April earlier, and I was saying, I suppose if you're booking a videographer, then you kind of want to go out and get smoke bombs and confetti cannons, and just then at least that's giving you something, and that creative sort of juices are there for you to get going.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose going back to capturing things nice and naturally, if clients get smoke bombs and confetti cannons and things like that, they look absolutely amazing on camera. They do, but at the same time, if a couple and that doesn't fit in with their personalities, I'm absolutely fine with them not getting them as well. So, I suppose the main things that I always think are important to establish when booking a videographer is we all see fantastic looking images on websites and on social media, and I suppose what we don't see is what the full sort of day looks like. How does the person respond if it's raining? What will happen in certain scenarios? So it's really just establishing what what your taste is, and is that videographer going to fit in with your day. If you're having a relaxed, intimate wedding day, then a videographer that is more about an energetic vibe and more, let's say, for example, like, you know, karaoke and things like that, then that's not going to be the right videographer for you. But I think couples are quite savvy, and I think that they know now, don't they? They know what they want, what they like, and what they don't like. And I think it's quite clear to see in work what is going to be
Yeah.
for them and to their taste, I suppose.
Yes. So, do you think it's important for couples to ask questions such as, "What equipment do you use? Will you bring an assistant on the day?" Or would
Yeah.
you? Yeah, you think it is
Yeah,
sort
I
of.
do. I do think it's super important to establish all of those things. You just hit the nail on the head. What sort of equipment do you use? Is it going to be big and bulky? Is it going to be intrusive? Are they going to be on a gimbal, for example, all day? That's another favourite. Walking around with a gimbal. I personally use a gimbal. What's a gimbal, did you say?
Yeah.
So it's basically essentially a stabilizer. So you pop your camera on it and it counterbalances the camera, and it just
Oh.
means if you're walking, it's really, really stable.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
But without getting too technical, the best lenses to use on those are wide angle, which means you need to be closer to people. So I tend to only use a gimbal, for example, for confetti shots. But again, it's going to be down to personal tastes. Some videographers like moving images all the way through their films. I prefer a more of a static image. From afar, like shooting through things. Uh,
Mm.
Creating a bit of depth in the shot and things like that. So again, going back to your question, it is, yeah, definitely important to establish what sort of equipment they will be using and what sort of style. It's okay watching a video or a clip of a video on social media, and if every shot's moving, it's probably somebody walking around your guest to get that shot. And is that intrusive? And how does that make your guest feel? It's okay capturing that shot, but do they want to be circled 1,000 times with a gimbal? Is that what you're going for in your wedding? So it's definitely, things like that are definitely worth asking and definitely worth looking into.
I was just going to say, so when I used to work in retail, and we did in the store I worked in, we did a really big modernisation, and the shopping centre wanted to do some filming on it, and he had a gimbal. Now I know what one is, and he came in and he videoed, but to try and capture something natural, it was quite awkward. And it to a point where I ended up having to run ahead to the next cosmetics counter and be like, right, the guy with the camera's coming. He will come close to you, but just try and keep calm. Like it was, it was actually quite a fraught experience. But I mean, some of the girls loved it, as you can imagine. They were like, "Oh, I'm ready for my close up." But some of them were like, "Oh, April, I don't know if I want, I don't know if I want it." So I think that whole, like, what you're saying about getting some shots from further back, so people can be natural. Like I've seen the opposite, and from a videoing perspective, it made me nervous. So, like, to hear you say that would make me feel more comfortable about it.
No, definitely. And I think, just adding on to what you're saying there, it's what is it bringing? I suppose when I'm capturing a moment or planning to capture a moment, the thing that goes through my head is what is this piece of equipment, or what is this focal length, or what is this, if it is a gimbal, what is that bringing to that shot? What is it bringing to capturing that moment? Now, a gimbal's fantastic for creating movement, but again, is it necessary? Is it necessary at that moment? Again, it's fantastic for some moments in the day. And without making this a gimbal podcast, I think it's great for things like confetti, because more often than not, we have to share a confetti shot with a photographer. Photographers, much like ourselves, like to capture the shot, and usually we'd have the couple walking towards us with like a bit of a row of people throwing confetti. So a gimbal's great for that, because you're walking backwards for a start and it's nice and steady and stable, and when you slow it down in slow motion, it looks really good. But is a gimbal something that I would probably use as the couple come out of the church and they're being greeted by their mum and dad? Sure, it looks cinematic. Sure, in slow motion, it looks fantastic. But personally, I think I'd be getting in the way by doing that. So I
Yeah.
choose not to. And the more sort of experienced I become, and the more years go by, I'm trying to use less and less equipment, and just really knuckling down to what's most important, and that is capturing a moment unobtrusively in a way that's pleasing to look back at, with a bit of an artistic flow.
So you touched on it just a moment ago, and it's one of the things I did want to sort of cover, because obviously when people are, looking at booking, sort of planning their wedding, one of the first things they book after their venue is a photographer. So I would say every single wedding I've ever been to have had photographers. Now, how do you work alongside photographers? I mean, I've seen you at work, at a wedding, working alongside some photographers that we know quite well, and obviously we're all friends, and everybody kind of is just respecting each other's space, and it worked really well. But if you don't know the photographer, or perhaps you're in quite a confined space, if it's a very small ceremony room or a really small church, how do you get those moments without standing in the way of the photographer or the photographer standing in the way of you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite easygoing when it comes to working alongside other people, and I've never really had many problems with working with a photographer. I guess it just comes down to communication would be the biggest word for to use in this scenario, because communication is everything. The last thing that I want to be doing is ruining a shot for a photographer, and I'm sure they would be the same. They wouldn't want to, stand in the front of my camera, and I'm sure they wouldn't do that on purpose. So communication is key. What I try to do, like you said earlier, we have the pleasure of working with a lot of our friends in the industry. We get recommended by fellow photographers, and in turn we do the same back, and it sort of keeps you on a bit of a circle of working with the same people. So once you've worked with the same people, you tend to know how each other works, and you tend to automatically, a bit like driving a car, you know where to be and when to be and how to be. But for example, if I was working with a new photographer, my approach really is always just who I am, just try and establish what they're going to achieve, and just be friendly, really, and just say to them, if I'm in your way at all, please just give me a tap on the shoulder and I'll move straight away. There is
Mm.
certain elements that, for example, are more important to a videographer than to a photographer, for example. So one of those moments may be the speeches, for example. So we have to capture the speeches from a video's obviously moving image point of view. We have to capture the audio. We have to have a full, unobstructed image of whoever's doing that speech. With things we can do, somebody walks in front of the B cam, for example, but that A cam needs to be sort of on that person that's speaking. So again, communication, it's speaking to the photographer saying, hey, this is where I'm going to be. Is that okay with you? Does that work for you? If not, it's negotiated and just seeing where is best to stand. And I guess that's the essence all throughout the day. And that's the key, is just being respectful and not thinking that you're the most important person on that wedding day. They have a job to do as well. For example, if you're capturing um, the aisle shot, we like to capture a center of the aisle shot. So we'll say to the photographer, would you like us to set our tripod up high or low? So if we set it up low, they can shoot over the top of our tripod, or they might be the kind of photographer that likes to get a really close to the floor shot. So they might want to sit down and get a really close to the floor shot, an angle of from the center of the aisle. And in that case, I'm happy to put the tripod nice and high so that they can go in front of the camera. And I guess, again, just going back to it, it's communication, working as a team, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. So, what does a typical wedding day look like for you then? Because and I know we've spoken in the past before about how I think me and you are probably going to be the first people to arrive at the wedding because we just like to have that sort of headspace and chance to be creative and that kind of thing. So, do you get there sort of in the morning and start shooting right away from the bridal prep, or does it start later on? How does a typical wedding day run from start to finish?
So I always like to put it in the hands of the bride and groom, really, and I'll have a chat with them prior to the wedding and sort of discuss, when they feel comfortable with filming commencing. So what I will normally do is make a suggestion that we start filming bride and groom prep roughly 2 to 3 hours before the wedding ceremony, because that's when the main things are starting to happen. But with the bride and groom's permission, I like to be there nice and early on site to capture things like, this. For example, in the winter, the sun's really, really low in the morning, and it looks beautiful, and you can get some really nice shadows and some creative drone shots. So I like to be, like you just said, I like to be on site at least if I was starting filming, a couple or 3 hours before the ceremony. I would like to be on site capturing drone footage and things like that, the setup at least 2 or 3 hours before that. So, typically that's what a wedding day would sort of start out like. Again, and this is with the bride and groom's permission. Obviously, we suggest what might work the best. But again, if they're like, no, we're going to be walking around in our dressing gowns having breakfast and we don't want anybody around us at that time, that's fine too. So it really just come down to the bride and groom, what they want. But mostly we find that they're like, you guys do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't like to start filming a bride as she's just had her breakfast.
Just get out the
But
shower.
yeah, no, I think there's a fine line there. But I always only start filming bride and groom when they're comfortable, when they're ready, and everything else before that is just getting a feel for the venue, getting a feel for the day, getting a feel for the setup, and capturing that really important B-roll just to tell that sort of start of the story.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think it's nice that you can because obviously you've been doing it so long, and you kind of know that you need that time in a morning, and you can suggest that to your brides and grooms because obviously they haven't got married before, so they don't really know what to expect. And I mean, most of my brides and grooms come to me and say, "Well, you're the expert. What do you suggest?" And I think that's great. So yeah, that's brilliant.
So, Steph, how long would you say it takes? I know you said that when you got married, you got your video back during your honeymoon. So, obviously, I'm guessing that it didn't take that long actually to get the first like trailer glimpse of your wedding video. Like, how long does it usually take you to edit the video so it can go back to the couples? Like, do they have a choice of music to go with it? Are they able to like suggest any changes or anything?
Yeah, so with regards to post-production, that's probably, one of my favorite parts really, because it's a time where we can sit down, you know, really go through that footage and for every second of the day just pick out them very best bits and put something good together. But it's something, I suppose, when you ask how long it takes, it's something that I'm always trying to get more efficient with as the years go by. Roughly, it takes about 80 hours in total of editing to do a whole wedding collection. Now that's the trailer, that's the feature film, that's the full ceremony, the full speeches, and any Instagram edits and things and that
That's
they may
quite a
want.
long time.
Yeah,
So roughly about 80 hours. And what I'm
Wow.
aiming to do this year is to what we always do is to deliver the trailer within sort of 2 to 4 weeks after the wedding. We then sort of quote a timescale of 8 to 16 weeks after the wedding for the whole thing to be delivered. And that's
Yeah.
just really to give us a little bit of sort of space to get creative, and obviously, make something that's going to be really memorable to watch back.
Yeah. And keep sort of coming back like an artist, you would keep going back to a piece and
Yeah.
adding this and adding that. And if you think of something different, yeah, I like that you're giving yourself that time to make it sort of perfect.
I am my own biggest critic when it comes to editing. I've literally spent 2 solid days, and I'm talking like 16-hour days, editing a film, and I've played it back, and I've just wiped the whole thing and started again because it's just not right. And my second shooter, Steve, sometimes he'll come round and he'll sort of help out with a bit of editing and stuff, and he'll grab hold of his hair and he'll be like pulling it. He'll be like, "Oh, I cannot believe you've just." And when I say delete, I don't mean delete their footage. I mean delete what I've created and start again. So he'll be like pulling out his hair. He'll be like, I cannot believe you've just spent over 30 hours and
Yeah.
you've just deleted it. And I'm just my own biggest critic. If it's not perfect, I won't release it.
I'm
And so, yeah,
exactly the same.
I
Exactly
just
the
keep
same. I
going.
will, yeah, play a piece over and over and over, and it's never. I'll listen back and it'll just never be quite right. I'm just like, oh, I could do it better. I know I could do it better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes some films, I can start the editing process, go all the way through, and I'm fully happy with it, and it's perfect. And I'm like, yep, I'm happy with that. I've watched it a few times, brilliant. And sometimes I just struggle with getting it perfect, so I won't release it. And
until you're
so,
ready.
yeah, I
Yeah,
just suppose it just comes down to going over it with a fine tooth comb, and I will watch it and watch it and watch it and watch it to make sure it is absolutely perfect before I release it. But by rule, I would say somewhere between 60 and 80 hours is what I tend to spend on a full wedding collection.
wowzers. So how do you back up all of your footage then? I mean, obviously, your worst nightmare would be to lose any of it. Even just a 5-minute clip. I imagine that would not be great. So can you offer some sort of security to brides and grooms that this is our backup processes and this is how we work?
Yeah, of course. I mean, backup is a massively important thing to me. And it's something from the very early days of sort of shooting with cameras with only one memory card slot that was absolutely terrifying because that's all they had. Um, it, it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I suppose backup for me starts from the very beginning of the wedding day. So I shoot on cinema cameras, and basically they have two SD cards in there, and what they do is they simultaneously record to both SD cards on each camera. So there's always a backup copy. For example, if a card was to corrupt or something was to happen, then you've always got that second backup copy. And then at the end of the wedding day, this is where the sort of time comes into it. We obviously start on the wedding day and we finish, and that could be sort of 12 to 16-hour day. And then when I get home, let's say if we're traveling a few hours, I then always, without fail, will sit and back up the footage for a good 2 or 3 hours to multiple locations, multiple hard drives, and then up to the cloud as well. So I would
Wow.
say I've got 3 to 4 backups of their footage from the moment I walk through the door. There's two backups of their footage when I walk through the door, and then there's 2 to 4 backups of their footage by the time I've finished. So that's a really important thing to me, and it's
Mm.
something that I'm very careful with, and always handle it with, as precious. It's just precious footage, isn't it? And
Yeah,
you don't. The
yeah.
last thing you want to do is lose anything.
Yeah, you can't do the day again, so it is
Exactly.
very precious, yeah,
And
definitely.
that'll give your brides and grooms confidence, won't it? Like that, it's kind of like an insurance, isn't it? Like knowing that regardless of what happens, you will have it. You have caught that day, that moment. It's not going anywhere. So it gives your clients more confidence in you, and that's why your work is as good as it is, because you like think of everything clearly before it even happens.
Yeah, attention to detail is
I try
definitely
to.
there.
Yeah, I try to sort of, um, over the years and over the experience of shooting many weddings, you sort of tend to learn more and more every time you shoot a wedding. And I'm always learning, and I always want to learn. I'm always looking at tutorials and on new ways of doing things and on better ways of doing things. But backing up is definitely one of the biggest things that I put focus into. Yeah, like you said, you can't shoot a wedding again. That couple have trusted you with their memories. You've got all of their memories in your hands. And so that's why, again, some people don't. Some people will film on one card. Some people will be more risky and, maybe back it up the next day or something like that. But yeah, it's, you get in from a wedding day and sure, you are absolutely tired, you're knackered. But you soldier on through and you back up that footage, and that happens every single time. And sometimes my wife will wake up and it'll be like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and she'll knock on the office door and she'll be like, "Are you okay?" Like, "Yeah, I'm nearly done. I'm just backing up this last one." And of course, we shoot with 2 to 4 cameras, so there's always a couple of SD cards there. We've got a drone, we've got all the audio. There's about 7 or 8 SD cards there, and then you have to back them all up. So it is an important process, and it's one that I take very seriously.
Yeah. And then if you capture, anybody falling over, you can sell it on to You've Been Framed for 250 quid and
I don't know about that. I don't know
guaranteed.
about that, but we have
No, I'm
captured some
joking.
funny moments, some very funny moments. But yeah, no, it's always nice as well. It's I always find it quite therapeutic when I get back from a wedding. You tend to forget the first half of the day because the second half was so, energetic. So you sort of re go through it, and I'll always check some shots and just make sure that everything was okay, and just go through it, and yeah, just try and get a feel for how it went. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's always good to do that.
Yeah, definitely sort of look back on the day and yeah, I do the same, if anybody's sort of filmed me singing or somebody's walking down the aisle or something, I'll see if I can find any little clips of it. Did it sound okay? Because, I can't redo it. So
Yeah.
was it all right? So, I just touched on there some, funny moments, and you must capture some crazy things. Can you tell us like one of the funniest or the most memorable things that you've kind of looked back at your footage and thought, "Oh my gosh, look what we've got here."
Yeah, we capture some awesome things, and I don't know about, like, funny or anything like that, but, we've had, like, brides arrive in a helicopter unannounced, and we didn't know anything, no one else knew anything, and that's
Wow.
a bit of a wow thing, so that's quite I mean, I remember one wedding. This happened at a wedding a couple of years ago, actually, and we were sort of, as you do, you're outside the church waiting for the bride to arrive, and the ushers are out there, the bridesmaids have arrived, and the car's there, and things like that. So we're all looking for a car, and just out of nowhere, you just hear this really low flying helicopter, and then this pilot must have been, I don't know, he must have been some kind of a stunt pilot, because he sort of come from behind the church, he banked it round so it was nearly upside down. He like pulled in front of the church and the field opposite. He just not slammed it, but he come down really fast and then softly landed it on the grass.
Oh, wow.
Just
James Bond
everybody,
style.
yeah, it literally was James Bond style, and out popped the bride and her dad, and it was like, wow, that was something special.
So please tell me you caught all of that on camera.
Oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah, that's
definitely got that on
incredible.
camera. I'll see if I can dig it out for you, actually, and
That would be so
Yeah,
good. Yeah, would
so
love to see
good.
that. That would
yeah,
be
that.
amazing.
Another moment was, this was more of a calmer moment, but a nice moment. A wedding last year. One of the groomsmen proposed to one of the bridesmaids on the dance floor after the first dance. That was quite nice.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
nice.
lovely.
He was sort of really, really scared all day, and he had the ring with him, and she had no idea at all.
Oh
Uh,
my
there was lots
goodness.
of tears, and it was just like everybody got on the dance floor and was crying and cuddling each other after. It was really special. That was nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah. Natalie, actually, so our last podcast was with Natalie Kate, makeup artist, and she actually was the person that nominated you to come on as our next guest. Anyway, she said, I must ask you, because you did a wedding together recently, or maybe past couple of years, and she said the father of the bride sort of was didn't really know what to do with himself the morning of the wedding, and went out and started building a bit of a wall, doing some DIY in his back garden, and dropped a breeze block on his face. And she was like, you must ask Steph, because he was there videoing it. Do you remember that?
A breeze block on his face.
Yeah, she said
I
he dropped one on his face, and she had to, once he'd sort of like cleared his face up and cleaned himself up, she had to try and patch it up and cover up his black eyes.
I don't know. I can't remember that, to be
Oh,
honest.
maybe you weren't there. Maybe you were elsewhere.
Maybe I was. Maybe I was.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know which couple that was, though. Maybe
Yeah,
it's just
that's
me
ask
being
The one
forgetful.
whose father had black eyes by the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I can't remember, to be honest. No, that's a good one, actually. I'll have to ask her about that.
Yeah, you will, definitely. So like I say, Natalie was the one that nominated you, and a couple of other people to be our next guest. So the final thing I wanted to ask was, is there anybody that you can nominate for us to interview next?
There's so many people I'd like to nominate, but I would like to nominate Richard and Christine of
Oh,
Kazumi Loki.
yeah, they're absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they are, and we work with them quite a lot, and we have a very similar style. So it's always nice to work with them, just
Yeah.
purely because we work in a very similar way.
They're definitely on our list already of people that we would love to get on, and I've actually been in touch with Richard already about it. So that's brilliant.
We're on the
Awesome,
right
that's really
track.
good.
Mm.
So yeah, so I think that's probably. I mean, we've covered all the things that I definitely wanted to cover, and you've answered so many of our questions, and we are just so grateful for you coming on and taking time out of your evening to sit and chat to us about your job and your business and weddings. So yeah, so thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it, and we hope you've enjoyed it.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I've never done a podcast before, so this is the first time. So it's like
Oh.
the debut podcast.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really appreciate you guys asking me to be part of it. It's really good, and I really like what you're doing. I listen to your podcasts, and yeah, it's good. It's gonna be good, and I'll always carry on listening.
Oh, Brill. Well, I mean, we will definitely go forward and, recommend you to people because, like I say, we've worked together. I know your work is incredible. So yeah. So, just quickly, if people do want to have a look at your work and find you, whereabouts do they need to go on social media, and what's your website and things like
Yeah.
that?
So the Instagram handle is at Lincolnshire Videography, and the website is www.lincolnshirevideography.com. Nice and easy to remember.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Steph.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Take care.
We really hope you found our conversation with Steph informative and inspiring. Steph, as you have just heard, is a true professional and prides himself on his attention to detail and his incredible creative flair. Steph is based in Lincolnshire, as the name suggests, but he travels all over the UK and beyond. And you can find Steph on Instagram and Facebook at Lincolnshire Videography, or visit his website www.lincolnshirevideography.com. And if you're thinking of hiring a videographer for your big day, I can assure you that once you see Steph's work, you will be completely sold. And thank you again for tuning in to The Wedding Circle. We are blown away by how many people are listening and loving the episodes. Don't forget to tag us and comment on our social media to let us know that you've listened. And if you'd be so kind as to leave us a review on iTunes, we'd be so grateful, as it really does help us reach more and more couples looking for help and guidance for their wedding planning journey. So thanks again, and see you next time.